Good afternoon, Saitlanders. How are you? We hope that you're well. Sorry, as I started speaking there and started projecting my voice to the microphone, I realized I had a little frog in my throat. Yesterday we spoke about Dmitry Medvedev's terrifying prophecies for 2023. And before we go on to complete them, we handled half of them, I should probably point out something that I didn't point out yesterday. Namely, that these prophecies should be adjudicated by you and me with discernment. That some of the prophecies may be absolutely literal or intended literally, but some of them may be metaphorical, or they may be exaggerations. There's a technique used in the Bible and in many other literary locations, which is, in Latin it means to illustrate something to illustrate a smaller principle with a larger example. So sometimes in life we come across a concept and it's difficult to understand the principles involved in that concept. But when you describe it to somebody else as a expanded thing, the idea becomes more easy to understand. And I think that he is, number 5, for instance, that we handled yesterday. He said the Fourth Reich will be created, encompassing the territory of Germany and its satellites, i.e. Poland, the Baltic states, Czechia, Slovakia, the Kiev Republic, in other words, a portion of Ukraine, and other outcasts. And I don't think for a moment, and I should have made this clear yesterday, that he genuinely believes that in the span of 1 year, there's going to be an almighty right-wing uprising in Germany. It's going to totally capsize the state and the government. It's going to assume complete control, implement a Fourth Reich, and then occupy these regions, all in one bang shoot. What he may mean, and I can't be certain because he is being obscure, clearly. So I don't know for sure, but I think what he may be intending with this exaggerated example is to illustrate the principle of the people of Germany becoming completely fed up with the consequences of NATO and the European Union's response to the war in Ukraine, and them forcing or driving a complete change of mentality, prevailing mentality in Germany. And we've spoken previously, excuse me, I think I've just been bitten by a fly. One of those biting things or something like that. Anyway, and that there's a likelihood that many other peoples in Europe, such as Western Poland, which was German until the end of World War II. It was given to Poland as a prize. The Baltic states, Czechia, particularly that region of the Czech Republic or Czechia, which was historically very heavily German. I forget the correct name, but the Sudetenland. And of course, we know, for instance, that Prague was once Prague, the capital of the Czech Republic, was once very heavily German. I believe I could be mistaken, but I think the philosopher Immanuel Kant was from Prague, if I'm not mistaken. The German philosopher, arguably the greatest of all philosophers ever. And that Germany will find great sympathy among the neo-Nazis of Ukraine. We've spoken about this before. Why is there such strong Nazi sympathy in Ukraine? It's a very simple thing. It's not a complicated thing. If I was there, I would probably be one of them, because of the way my sentiments work. It's very simple. In the early 20th century, particularly 1917, but other years can be used as milestones, the Russian Revolution occurred. The Russian Revolution was simply not driven by ethnic Russians. And you only have to go and look at the evidence to learn that. It's a very, very fascinating thing. However, by the 1930s, the Russian Revolution was largely collapsing under its own weight, firstly. Secondly, there'd been a number of crop failures. And thirdly, the peasants of Ukraine, particularly the landowning peasants of Ukraine, were recalcitrant. That means they were unwilling to participate. They were largely independent. They didn't depend upon the communist system for their subsistence because they farmed in wonderful, thick black soil. They always had good harvests and they lived fairly comfortably for what they were, peasants. And therefore, to cover those three factors in different ways, but to kill three birds with one stone, in 1932, Joseph Stalin expropriated without compensation the crops of the peasants of Ukraine and left them to starve. About 1/3 of the entire population of Ukraine starved to death. Between 7 and 10 million people is the accepted number. It was devastating. Imagine 1/3 of the population, 1/3! It's a phenomenal number. Some historians say that the most brutal war in all history was the English Civil War, in which about 25%, there was about a 25% mortality rate. So that gives you some perspective, versus 33% at least of the Ukrainians killed in this event, which became known as the Holodomor, the killing of all, the death of all. So, when the Nazis invaded 9 years later, in 1941, many Ukrainians gave them, and this is well recorded, what is described as the traditional offering of bread and salt. Many people talk about, they use the word offering rather than gift. The Nazis were welcomed as saviors, not as visiting cousins, not as children on Christmas Day. They were welcomed as saviors and they were given offerings of bread and salt. And so, and that's perfectly natural, the most natural thing in the world, because the Nazis were rescuing the Ukrainians from this devastating, absolutely devastating oppression under the Russian Revolution. And Dmitry Medvedev is saying that when the rubber starts to hit the road, I think this is what he's saying, in the next year, as cold and hunger bite in Europe, as joblessness and inflation take hold, the Rightwing will garner enormous amounts of support from people all over the show. And Germany will capitalize very heavily upon that. Okay, with all of that said, we can move on very quickly to number 6. War will break out between France and the Fourth Reich. In other words, the French will oppose this German resurrection. Europe will be divided. Poland repartitioned in the process. The repartitioning of Poland is almost a sine qua non. A sine qua non means without this, nothing. None of this is going to happen if Poland is not going to be repartitioned. In other words, the historical construction of Poland is a matter of such deep historical injustice and discontent to some people that if any of this stuff happens, well, for sure, one of the first things that's going to happen is going to be the rectifying, as some people would see it, of Poland's borders and Poland's existence. Why would the French oppose the Fourth Reich? I think that Dmitry Medvedev's reasoning is once again very much historical in nature. The French and the Germans haven't seen eye to eye since the Holy Roman Empire under Charlemagne. Karl the Grosse, as the Germans call him. That's 1,000 years back, or very close. It is 1,000 years back, but it was either then or very shortly after then that the French, or the proto-French and the proto-Germans, began to go their own ways. One very much a Romance culture. The Romance cultures are the cultures that are most heavily derived from Roman culture. That is to say, Italy, or Italian, French, Spanish, Portuguese, a portion of Switzerland and some other countries. Whereas the German, or the proto-German culture, was very Saxon, Prussian, Junker. Even hundreds of years ago, it was beginning to go in a clear direction. So that schismatism is a natural fault line between those cultures. And if the one goes the one way, well then for certain the other goes the other way. Northern Ireland will separate from the UK and join the Republic of Ireland. That's very interesting, because I think that, here we might consider Wimsina van Rensburg's prophecy, which about the little girl with the red hair, I think it's red hair and blue eyes. I can't remember the prophecy verbatim, which was meant to represent, according to some people. I've always been not skeptical of it, but I'm not convinced. If somebody said, oh, Wimsina van Rensburg said, or Sina van Rensburg's best friend said, or Sina van Rensburg's daughter, Anna Badenhorst, the one who wrote the prophecies in the school exercise books, because he could read but not write. She wrote that that's what he meant. He was referring to Ireland. If I knew that, then I would buy in absolutely. But it's my impression that it is a conclusion that people have drawn by themselves. And may I be wrong? If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. All I'm saying is that I am not advocating to you that prophecy for certain means that Ireland is going to become fully independent, as Eyre, or the Republic of Ireland, Southern Ireland, did in 1923. However, if I am wrong, and that is the meaning of the prophecy, well, then it's very interesting, because that prophecy appears, to the best of my recollection, to be a critical milestone in terms of end-time events, in terms of our affairs, in terms of the great international developments like the lighting, the setting alight, the setting afire of the third great Huimit haystack. Number 8, civil war will break out in the US. California and Texas becoming independent states as a result. I have to tell you, I don't know. This is such a long conversation, but I think it's highly improbable. He then goes on to say Texas and Mexico will form an allied state. It sounds highly improbable to me. I cannot make sense of it. Elon Musk will win the presidential election in a number of states which, after the new civil wars end, will have been given to the Grand Old Party. The Grand Old Party, GOP, is the nickname of the Republican Party, symbolized by the elephant, and the donkey is the Democrats. I hope I'm right. Texas and Mexico forming an allied state? I can't see it happening, although the demographics of Texas, Arizona and New Mexico have become so heavily Latina. How do you say it? Latino is for males, Latina is for females, and now they have a Latinx. That's meant to be the non-sexist word for all Latinos. Poor people, that anything is possible. Obviously, their sympathies lie further south, and they constitute very large proportions of the populations of those states. And California too. So, I'm going to kind of skip that one and not give too much of an analysis because it seems highly improbable, as I said. Number 9, all the largest stock markets and financial activity will leave the US and Europe and move to Asia. Again, I'm positive that he's not being literal here. He's positing something absolutely preposterous, but which is already happening. However, it's never going to happen entirely. So I think he's saying this to goad and to antagonize and to illustrate, again, a maiori ad minus, with a gross exaggeration, a small but true and valid principle. Number 10, the Bretton Woods system of monetary management will collapse, leading to the IMF and World Bank crashes. Euro and dollar will stop circulating as the global reserve currencies. Digital fiat currencies will be actively used instead. The Bretton Woods system refers to a meeting held between the 2nd and 22nd of June or July 1944, in which the 44 Allied powers came together to resolve a very big issue of the time, namely that the Allied countries, apart from the USA and Russia had been given, it's a long story, but Russia had been subsidized in a sneaky, underhanded way that the US population didn't know about, to the extent of hundreds of billions of dollars. The rest were bankrupt. They had given their gold to the USA in return for war material and the USA's involvement. They asked for their gold back, to back their currencies. And in return, they promised that they would pay off the monetary value, as opposed to gold, of their debts to the USA. The USA declined and said, we're keeping your gold. But we tell you what, if you peg your currencies to the dollar, as the dollar goes up and down, if you peg your currencies to the dollar will remain backed by all of this gold. Eventually, all of the Allied powers except Russia agreed. Russia disagreed because they said it was, and they walked out. They said it was an absolute con story, which would lead to the global economy becoming an extension of Wall Street. Meaning, what they really meant was the global, or not the global economy, the global financial system, or fiscal system, if you like, would become an extension of the 7 banks that control the Federal Reserve. That is much closer to the truth of the thing. The 7 mostly, in fact it's 8, but 7 of them are very, very, very hardly American at all. Only one, the Rockefeller interest, is really and truly, American. So they're saying, then after 1944, 1971, the Americans went off the gold standard. And so now the whole world only has fiat currencies. A fiat currency is when I say, this pencil is worth 3 million rand and I can buy a Mercedes S500 brand new out of the box with it. There you go. You have to accept that. Take that. Give me the Merc. In silver, please. Black leather. So he's saying, we've had since 1944, 54, 64, 74, 84, 94, 104, 114, 124. Practically 80 years of this false global financial system, and it is now going to collapse, leading to the IMF and the World Bank crash. Now that's not a preposterous assertion, because it is clearly already beginning. How far it's going to go, I don't know. Imagine I came to your house for a visit and there'd been heavy rains. You live in Durban, you live in Amanzimtoti, where I grew up, on the bluff, not the bluff area, on the physical sand dune that constitutes Amanzimtoti from the Mbogantwini River mouth all the way to the beyond the Toti River mouth, beyond Chain Rocks, right through to the other side of Warner Beach, if you like. You live on one of those bluffs, and there's been heavy rains, and there's a bit of a crack in your wall, and I say to you, oh, heavens above, the whole house is about to fall down any minute now. And you say, whoa, calm down, Simon, calm down. We don't know yet how far this crack is going to spread. That crack occurred a week ago, and since then it has not deteriorated at all. And besides, it's only 1 millimeter wide. It's the paint and the plaster. Brickwork, makeer niks. Right. So we don't know that the IMF and the World Bank are definitively going to crash. And as he goes on to say, the euro and the dollar will stop circulating as the global reserve currencies. Will that happen in an absolutely terminal manner? Is that portion of your house going to fall all the way off and tumble down the sand dune? We don't know. But he is making an intelligent point. He's making it in a very antagonistic manner. I mean, clearly he's trying to goad somebody. He's trying to get up somebody's nose. He's trying to get on somebody's nerves. And he's probably doing a very good job of it. But whether it will go quite as far as he suggests remains to be seen. And I put it to you that this is allegorical or metaphorical. I put it to you that he's deliberately exaggerating, and that it shouldn't be taken entirely literally. Certainly we're seeing the dollar take an absolute pounding. You might say, well, how can that be the case? Because the rand has lost value relative to the dollar. Yes, but the dollar has lost value relative to gold, baked beans, wrapping paper, and any other thing you care to mention that you've ever experienced or known or seen or heard of in your life, from space shuttles to water pumps. We just don't see it. When the rand loses value to the dollar, in other words, when the rand loses even a relatively greater amount of its value relative to chicken's eggs or Sealy Posturepedic mattresses, and we think we're going down and everybody else is going up, but it's not the case. The rate of inflation in the USA has been demonstrated by a guy called, I want to say John Williams, but I have a feeling that I'm confusing him with, man, what is his name? Confusing him with the car dealership in Bloemfontein. Anyway, somebody Williams, Shadow Stats, you can look it up, shadowstats.com, you'll find it easily, has been demonstrated to be 16%. The real rate of inflation, actually, more correctly, the rate of the consumer price index increase or consumer price increase, 16%. Can you imagine? So the dollar is being smashed to smithereens, and so too is the euro. We just don't see it. Digital fiat currencies to be actively used in 2023. I'm going to end this video by saying to you, yes, absolutely, without a doubt. But I'm sticking my neck out. That's my opinion. There is no doubt. But I'm sticking my neck out. Time will tell. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. Thank you for watching all of the videos that we produce. We're going to be producing tons and tons and tons, many, over the next few months, and we look forward to seeing you again. All right, goodbye, and God bless you, everybody. Bye-bye.